The stars looked cold and empty through the viewing screen of the Vorax warship. Admiral Garthok stood with his clawed hands behind his back, watching the darkness of space. His red eyes scanned the display in front of him. The Vorax were hunters. They had conquered 17 star systems. Every species in this sector knew their name and feared it. A sharp beep broke the silence on the bridge. One of the crew members turned to face the Admiral. "Sir, we have picked up a distress signal. It's coming from the outer rim." Garthok's ears twitched with interest. "What kind of signal?" "It appears to be from a human vessel. A colony ship called the New Dawn. They are under attack." The Admiral moved closer to examine the data. Humans. He had heard of them. They were new to space travel. Weak creatures who had only joined the galactic community 10 years ago. They had no real weapons, no strong military, no empire. Just small colonies scattered across a few systems. "Who is attacking them?" Garthok asked. "The Skrull horde, sir. We count 12 bioships surrounding the human vessel." Several crew members hissed at the mention of the Skrull. The Skrull were parasites. They consumed entire populations, turning them into more of their own kind. Even the Vorax avoided the Skrull when possible. Fighting them meant boarding their ships, and that was always bloody work. Garthok thought for a moment. The Vorax Dominion had a reputation to maintain. They were the strongest predators in this region. If they let the Skrull destroy a helpless colony ship, it would look like weakness. Besides, saving the humans could bring benefits. The humans would owe them a debt. Perhaps they would agree to become vassals of the Dominion. "Set course for the distress signal," Garthok commanded. "Maximum speed. We will show these parasites who rules this sector." The crew moved quickly to obey. The Vorax fleet consisted of 5 warships, each one designed for hunting and combat. They were fast, deadly, and had never lost a battle in this region. As they traveled through space, Garthok studied what information they had about humans. They came from a planet called Earth. It was a water-covered world with a single moon. Humans were small, weak creatures with soft skin and no natural weapons. They had almost destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons before finally uniting as one species. The galactic community had been surprised when humans developed faster-than-light travel. Most species thought they would kill themselves first. The Vorax fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the battle zone. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he saw the scene before them. The human colony ship was large, maybe 3 times the size of a Vorax warship. It drifted in space, surrounded by the Skrull bioships. The Skrull vessels looked like massive insects, all chitin and biological weapons. They were closing in on the New Dawn like predators circling wounded prey. "Sir, the human ship appears heavily damaged," the sensor officer reported. "I'm reading atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. Their shields are down. Weapon systems appear offline. Any life signs?" Garthok asked. "Yes, sir. I'm reading approximately 3,000 humans still alive on that ship, but the Skrull are preparing to board. If we don't act quickly, those humans will be consumed." Garthok bared his teeth in what his species called a smile. "Prepare weapons. All ships attack formation. We'll tear through these parasites and rescue the humans." Today the Vorax Dominion shows mercy. The fleet moved into position. The Vorax warships were smaller than the Skrull bioships, but they were faster and better armed. Garthok was confident. The Skrull relied on numbers and biological weapons. The Vorax had plasma cannons and kinetic missiles. This would be a quick victory. Just as the Vorax fleet was about to open fire, a voice came through the communication system. It was calm, almost casual. It spoke in the common galactic language. "Vorax fleet, this is Commander Day of the human vessel New Dawn. We appreciate your response to our distress call." Garthok frowned. The human commander sounded too calm for someone whose ship was about to be overrun by parasites. "Commander Day, this is Admiral Garthok of the Vorax Dominion. Hold your position. We are engaging the Skrull. Your ship will be safe shortly." There was a pause. Then Commander Day spoke again, and there was something in his voice that made Garthok's instincts scream a warning. "That's kind of you, Admiral. But you may want to hold your position instead. We're about to go loud." "What does that mean?" Garthok demanded. "Your ship is crippled. You have no shields, no weapons. You need our help." "Sir," the sensor officer shouted. "The human ship is powering up. I'm reading massive energy signatures across their hull." Garthok spun to look at the viewing screen. What he saw made no sense. The New Dawn was changing. Panels across its hull were sliding open, revealing weapon ports. Dozens of them. The venting atmosphere stopped. The ship's engines roared to life. The entire vessel rotated with a precision that no crippled ship should possess. All Skrull ships, this is your only warning. Commander Day's voice came through again. Break off your attack and leave this system. You have 10 seconds to comply. The Skrull did not respond. They never negotiated. They only consumed. Your choice, Commander Day said quietly. The New Dawn opened fire. Garthok had seen many battles in his long career. He had fought pirates, raiders, and rival predator species. He had seen weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand starfire. But he had never seen anything like this. The human ship fired weapons that the Vorax had never encountered. Kinetic harpoons launched from hidden ports, traveling at incredible speeds. They punched through the Skrull bioarmor like it was paper. Each harpoon was attached to a cable, and once they hit, they pulled tight, dragging Skrull ships closer to the New Dawn. Electromagnetic pulses rippled through space. The Vorax sensors went crazy trying to track them. The pulses hit the Skrull ships and their biological systems went haywire. Some of the bioships started firing on each other, their nervous systems confused by the electromagnetic interference. Then came the missiles. But these weren't normal missiles. They moved in patterns, weaving through space like living things. They didn't just hit the Skrull ships. They attached to them and started drilling into the hulls. Sir, those are boarding pods. The tactical officer shouted. The humans are boarding the Skrull ships. That's impossible, Garthok said. No one boards Skrull vessels. It's suicide. The interiors are filled with parasites and biological weapons. But the humans were doing it anyway. The Vorax sensors showed small teams of humans cutting through Skrull hulls and entering the bioships. Garthok expected to see them overwhelmed within seconds. The Skrull were ambush predators. They excelled at close combat in dark, confined spaces. Instead, the opposite happened. The Skrull ships started going dark. One by one, their systems failed. The Vorax could track the human teams moving through the corridors of the bioships like they had done this 100 times before. They moved in perfect coordination, clearing each section with brutal efficiency. In 15 minutes, half of the Skrull fleet was destroyed or captured. The remaining bioships tried to flee, but the New Dawn had positioned itself perfectly. More harpoons launched, catching the fleeing ships and dragging them back. Commander Day's voice came through the communication system again. Admiral Garthok, thank you for responding to our distress call. We truly appreciate it. However, as you can see, we have the situation under control. If you want to help, please secure the perimeter. Make sure no other Skrull ships enter the system. We'll handle the extermination of these parasites. Garthok stood frozen, staring at the viewing screen. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The humans weren't defending themselves. They weren't fighting for survival. They were hunting. The distress call had been bait. The damaged ship had been a trap, and the Skrull had walked right into it. Admiral, one of his officers asked quietly, what are your orders? Garthok continued to stare at the human ship. He had come here to rescue weak prey. Instead, he had found something else entirely. Something that made his predator instincts scream danger. Follow their instructions, he said finally. Secure the perimeter, and start recording everything. The Dominion needs to see this. On the viewing screen, the last Skrull ship went dark. The battle was over. The humans had won without taking a single casualty, and they had done it in less than 30 minutes. Garthok realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans hadn't needed rescue at all. They had been studying the Skrull, learning their patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This wasn't defense. This was a carefully planned hunt. And if humans could do this to the Skrull, what could they do to the Vorax? The silence on the Vorax bridge was heavy and uncomfortable. Every crew member stared at their screens, watching the human boarding teams finish their work inside the Skrull bioships. The sensors showed heat signatures and movement patterns that told a clear story. The humans were methodically clearing every compartment, every corridor, every dark corner where Skrull parasites might hide. Admiral Garthok watched a display showing the interior of one Skrull vessel. The human team moved in a formation he didn't recognize. They used weapons that seemed designed specifically for fighting in tight spaces. Flash grenades that released light and sound to disorient the Skrull. Compact rifles that fired rounds capable of punching through bioarmor. And something else. Something that disturbed the Admiral deeply. The humans weren't panicking. They weren't rushing. They moved with the calm precision of workers doing a routine job. When Skrull parasites ambushed them from ventilation shafts, the humans reacted instantly, almost as if they had expected it. When bioweapons sprayed acid, the humans' armor deflected it. When the Skrull tried to overwhelm them with numbers, the humans simply changed tactics, using explosives to collapse corridors and channel the parasites into killing zones. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the human ship," the communication officer said. "Commander Day is inviting you aboard the New Dawn. He says he wants to thank you personally for responding to their distress call." Garthok's claws tapped against his command chair. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea, but refusing the invitation would be seen as cowardice. The Vorax Dominion did not show fear. "Prepare a shuttle," Garthok said. "I'll take a small security team." "Sir, is that wise?" his second-in-command asked quietly. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." "That's exactly why I need to go," Garthok replied. "We need to understand what these humans really are." The shuttle trip to the New Dawn was short but felt longer. Garthok sat in the back, his mind racing. He had commanded the Vorax fleet for 20 years. He had seen many species, many warriors, many weapons, but nothing had prepared him for what he had witnessed today. The shuttle docked with the human ship, and Garthok stepped out with his security team. They were met by a human male wearing a dark uniform. He was shorter than the Vorax, with black hair and calm eyes. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "Admiral Garthok, welcome aboard the New Dawn. I'm Jin Ho, Chief of Security. Commander Day is waiting for you in the observation deck. Please follow me." Jin Ho led them through the corridors of the ship. Garthok looked around carefully, taking in every detail. The walls were metal, plain and functional. But there were things that seemed wrong for a colony ship. Reinforced bulkheads, hidden weapon ports, blast doors every 50 meters. This ship was built like a fortress. They passed groups of humans in the corridors. Adults and children, families and workers. They looked like ordinary civilians. But Garthok noticed things. The way they moved. The way they watched the Vorax security team without seeming to stare. The way even the children showed no fear of the large predator aliens walking through their ship. They reached the observation deck, a large room with windows showing the view of space. Commander Day stood there, looking out at the remains of the Skrull fleet. He turned when they entered. Day was middle-aged for a human, with gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no obvious weapons, but something about him reminded Garthok of the most dangerous predators he had ever faced, the ones who didn't need to show their teeth to be threatening. "Admiral Garthok, thank you for coming," Day said in fluent Vorax language. "And thank you for responding to our distress call. Even though we didn't need rescue, your willingness to help is noted and appreciated." "I have questions," Garthok said directly. The Vorax did not believe in wasting words. "I expected you would," Day replied. "Please ask." "Your ship sent a distress call. It appeared damaged and helpless. But it was all false." "Why?" Day nodded. "We needed to draw the Skrull into a specific position. They're cautious predators. They don't attack unless they think their prey is weak. So we showed them weakness. They took the bait." "You used yourself as bait to hunt the Skrull?" Garthok's voice showed his disbelief. "Yes." "That's insane. The Skrull could have destroyed you." A female human stepped forward from the side of the room. She was younger than Day, with her hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore a uniform with medical insignia. "Admiral, I'm Hana, Chief Medical Officer. May I answer that question?" Garthok nodded. "The Skrull couldn't have destroyed us," Hana said simply. "We've been tracking this particular horde for 3 months. We know their attack patterns, their biology, their tactics. We know how fast they move, what weapons they use, and how they think. We studied them completely before engaging. The risk was calculated and acceptable." Another human joined them, a male with sharp eyes and a lean build. "I'm Yoon, Weapons Officer. The trap was my design. Every weapon system you saw was specifically chosen to counter Skrull biology. The electromagnetic pulses disrupt their neural networks. The harpoons prevent them from fleeing. The boarding pods allow us to exterminate them at the source." "Exterminate." Garthok repeated the word. "You keep using that word. Not fight, not defeat, exterminate." "Yes," Yoon said without emotion. "The Skrull are parasites. They cannot be negotiated with. They cannot be reformed. They can only be destroyed. So that's what we do." A fourth human approached, and Garthok noticed that his security team tensed. This human moved differently than the others. He was muscular, with scars on his hands and the cold eyes of someone who had killed many times. "Admiral, I'm Tae Min. I coordinate the boarding teams." What you saw today was routine. We've cleared 47 Skrull vessels in the past 3 months. We've developed specific tactics for fighting in their bioships: close quarters combat, zero-gravity warfare, biological contamination protocols. My teams train 6 hours a day for this type of operation. Garthok looked at each human in turn. You're not colonists. You're soldiers. Day smiled slightly. We're both. On human ships, everyone has multiple roles. Yes, we have families aboard. Yes, we have children and civilians. But we also have military training. Because in space, Admiral, there are no safe places. There are only people who can defend themselves and people who can't. A younger human, a female who looked barely adult, raised her hand shyly. May I say something? Day nodded. Go ahead, Minji. Admiral Garthok, I'm an engineer. I maintain the ship's systems. I also have a family here. My parents and younger brother. When I was a child on Earth, I lived through what humans call the Unification Wars. I saw my city bombed. I saw my school destroyed. I learned to fix broken machines because that's how we survived. When we came to space, we didn't leave that knowledge behind. We brought it with us. Garthok was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the battle ended. How many ships like this do humans have? Day and the others exchanged glances. Finally, Day spoke. Admiral, humanity launched its deep space colonization program 5 years ago. We sent out hundreds of colony ships. All of them are like the New Dawn. All of them can defend themselves. All of them carry military personnel disguised as civilians. And all of them are mapping the galaxy, learning about the species we share it with and preparing for whatever comes next. You're not colonizing, Garthok said slowly, understanding dawning. You're taking positions, strategic positions. We're doing both, Day corrected. We are establishing colonies, real ones with farms and families and futures. But we're also ensuring those colonies can't be conquered, can't be enslaved, can't be consumed by parasites or claimed by empires. Humans learned a long time ago, Admiral. If you want peace, you must be ready for war. Another human entered the observation deck, and Garthok's security team immediately raised their weapons. The human stopped, hands visible and empty. Easy, Jinho said calmly. This is Hyun, our cultural liaison. He's here to explain human history to you. I promise he's not dangerous. Hyun was an older human with kind eyes and gray hair. He looked like a teacher or scholar. But Garthok had learned not to trust appearances with humans. Admiral Garthok, Hyun said gently. Commander Day asked me to provide some context. You see, humans have a very long history of warfare. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We created tactics and strategies for every type of combat imaginable. We studied the art of war so intensely that we wrote thousands of books about it. Why are you telling me this? Garthok asked. Because I want you to understand what you witnessed today, Hyun said. The boarding tactics, the ambush strategy, the psychological warfare of appearing weak. These aren't new innovations. We've been using these methods for thousands of years. We just adapted them for space combat. Hana spoke again. Admiral, you and your species are predators. You hunt, you conquer, you dominate, and you're very good at it. But humans evolved differently. We're not the fastest or strongest. We're persistence hunters. We track our prey over long distances. We outlast them. We outsmart them. And we never ever give up. There's something else you should know, Day said quietly. The people on this ship, the soldiers you saw boarding the Skrull vessels, the crew operating our weapons. They're not our best warriors. They're not our most dangerous soldiers. Garthok felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean that humanity has special forces. Units that train their entire lives for combat. People who have fought in wars you can't imagine. And when those warriors come to space, Day paused. Let's just say the galaxy hasn't seen them yet. The people on the New Dawn are the diplomatic option, Admiral. We're the ones who talk, who make friends, who try to find peaceful solutions. And if the peaceful solution fails? Garthok asked. Hana's expression went cold. Then you meet humanity's darkest warriors. And trust me, Admiral, you don't want that. No one does. The observation deck fell silent. Outside the windows, the destroyed Skrull fleet drifted in the darkness of space. Garthok looked at the humans around him. They seemed so small, so fragile. But he knew better now. They were predators of a different kind. Not hunters of flesh, but hunters of knowledge, of strategy, of victory itself. I think, Garthok said slowly, that the Vorax Dominion needs to reconsider its understanding of humanity. That would be wise, Day agreed. Admiral Garthok spent 3 days with the human fleet. Commander Day had invited him to observe their operations, and despite his unease, Garthok accepted. He needed to understand these creatures who fought like demons but looked like scholars. On the second day, Garthok was walking through one of the New Dawn's residential sections when he saw something that made him stop. A human child, no more than 6 years old, was playing with other children in a recreational area. They were laughing and running, completely normal. But then an alarm sounded. A drill. Not a real emergency. The children immediately stopped playing. They moved quickly to designated positions along the wall. They put on breathing masks that were stored in compartments. They waited quietly until the drill ended. When it was over, they went back to playing as if nothing had happened. They start training young, a voice said behind him. Garthok turned to see a human female with tired eyes. She was watching the children with a mixture of love and sadness. "I'm Sora," she said. "I'm a navigator on this ship. That's my daughter, the one with the red jacket." "Your children train for emergencies?" Garthok asked. "Everyone on this ship trains for emergencies," Sora replied. "When you're traveling through unknown space surrounded by potential threats, you can't afford to have anyone who panics. Even the children know what to do if the hull is breached, if there's a fire, if we're boarded by hostiles." "That seems like a difficult way to live." Sora looked at him with those tired eyes. "Admiral, I grew up on Earth during the Water Wars. I was 10 years old when my city was besieged. I spent 3 months living in a shelter, drinking recycled water, eating ration bars. I learned that survival isn't guaranteed. It's something you work for every single day. When I had my daughter, I promised myself she would know how to survive too." She paused, then added quietly, "I hope she never has to use those skills, but I know she might. So I teach her." Garthok watched the children play for a while longer. He was beginning to understand that humans carried their history with them like a heavy weight. They couldn't forget their wars, their struggles, their losses. So they prepared for the worst and hoped for the best. On the third day, Garthok was invited to a briefing in the New Dawn's operations center. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, tactical data, and sensor readings. Commander Day stood at the center with several of his officers. "Admiral, we wanted to show you something," Day said. "We're about to make contact with other human ships in this sector. I thought you might find it educational." Day nodded to Nari, the communications specialist. She was a young woman with quick fingers and sharp eyes. She typed commands into her console, and suddenly the room filled with holographic displays. "New Dawn to Prairie Wind, respond please," Nari said into her microphone. "Prairie Wind here," a voice replied. "Good to hear from you, New Dawn. How did the Skrull hunt go?" "Clean sweep," Day replied. "All targets eliminated, no casualties on our side." "Excellent work. We'll update our tactical database with your combat recordings." More ships joined the communication network. The bright morning, the steel garden, the quiet river. The names sounded peaceful, but Garthok was learning not to trust names when it came to humans. "Admiral," Day said, "I want to show you our network. We have 17 human ships in this sector. All of them are in constant communication. We share data, tactics, and resources. If one ship encounters a threat, all the others learn about it immediately." Quan, the tactical officer, pulled up a star map. It showed the positions of all 17 human ships. They were spread across the sector in a pattern that looked random at first. But as Garthok studied it, he saw the truth. The ships were positioned at strategic points, jump routes, trade lanes, resource-rich systems. The humans had carefully placed themselves where they could observe everything that happened in this sector. "You're spying on us," Garthok said, "on everyone." "We're gathering information," Day corrected. "The galaxy is a big place, Admiral. We need to understand it. Who's friendly, who's hostile, who's neutral, where the dangers are, where the opportunities are. We're not doing anything that any intelligent species wouldn't do. But you're doing it while pretending to be harmless colonists." "Yes," Day said simply. "Because if we arrived with warships and declared ourselves a military power, Every empire in the galaxy would see us as a threat. They'd unite against us. They'd try to crush us before we became too strong. This way, we're just innocent newcomers. Nobody pays attention to us until it's too late. Garthok felt a chill. Too late for what? Too late to stop us from establishing ourselves. Day replied, "In 5 years, Admiral, humanity will have hundreds of fortified positions across dozens of sectors. We'll have mapped every major power's territory. We'll know their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. And when we're ready, we'll reveal ourselves as what we truly are. Not as conquerors, but as a power that cannot be conquered." Nari spoke up from her station. "Admiral, there's something else you should know. We've been monitoring your fleet's communications since you arrived." Garthok's eyes widened. "Our communications are encrypted with military-grade security." "Yes," Nari said with a slight smile. "It took me about 6 hours to break your encryption. Human computers are very good at solving mathematical problems. Your codes are based on prime number sequences, which our AI systems can crack relatively easily." "You've been reading our private communications?" Garthok's voice was low and dangerous. "Only the military ones," Nari said calmly. "We don't bother with personal messages. But yes, we've been monitoring your tactical communications, your reports to the Dominion, and your strategic assessments. It's standard intelligence gathering." Garthok looked at Commander Day. "You're telling me this why? Why reveal what you can do?" "Because I want you to report it to your superiors," Day said. "I want the Vorax Dominion to know that humanity is not prey. We're not potential vassals. We're not weak newcomers who need protection. We're something else entirely." Another human entered the operations center. It was Sung, a shuttle pilot Garthok had met briefly. He was young, with a casual manner that seemed out of place among the serious military officers. "Commander, the recon mission is complete," Sung said. "We mapped that asteroid field in the neighboring system, found 3 good mining sites and no hostile presence." "Excellent work," Day said. "Any problems?" "No, it was easy flying. Nothing like the atmospheric combat runs back home." Sung noticed Garthok watching him. "Oh, hey, Admiral. Did Commander Day tell you about my old job?" "No," Garthok said. "I used to fly fighter jets during the water wars. Combat missions in hurricane conditions, dodging surface-to-air missiles, that kind of thing. Did it for 5 years before I got recruited for the space program. Honestly, flying in space is way easier. No weather, no air resistance. Just gotta watch out for debris and hostile fire." Sung spoke about combat flying the way someone might talk about driving to work. It was routine for him, normal. "How many combat missions did you fly?" Garthok asked. Sung thought for a moment. "About 200, I think. Maybe more. I stopped counting after a while. 200 combat missions, and he was just a shuttle pilot on a colony ship." Hyun, the cultural liaison, approached with a data pad. "Admiral, I've prepared some information about human military history for you. I thought you might want to review it." Garthok took the pad and began reading. What he saw disturbed him deeply. Humans had fought wars involving millions of soldiers. They had developed weapons that could kill thousands in seconds. They had bombed cities, burned forests, poisoned water supplies. They had created strategies for every type of terrain, every type of enemy, every possible scenario, and they had written it all down. Every tactic, every lesson, every hard-won piece of knowledge. Humans documented their wars like scientists documenting experiments. "Why are you showing me this?" Garthok asked. "Because I want you to understand," Hyun said gently. "The galaxy thinks humans are new to warfare. But we're not. We've been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. We just haven't had the chance to apply it in space until now." A alarm suddenly blared through the operations center. Quan looked up from his console, his face tense. "Commander, we're receiving a priority distress call. It's from a Vorax colony in the Theta sector. They're under attack by a massive Skrull armada." Garthok stepped forward immediately. "That's one of our core worlds." "How many Skrull ships?" "Over 100 bioships, sir. And they're not just raiding. They're attempting a full planetary invasion." Garthok's blood ran cold. 100 Skrull ships. The Vorax fleet he commanded had only 5 ships. Even if they rushed to help, they would be vastly outnumbered. "I must return to my fleet immediately," Garthok said. "We need to respond to this attack." "Of course," Day said. "But Admiral, may I make an offer?" "What kind of offer?" "Let us help you. The New Dawn and the other human ships in this sector can join your fleet. Together, we might be able to save your colony. Garthok wanted to refuse. The Vorax Dominion didn't accept help from lesser species. It was a matter of pride, of tradition, of maintaining their reputation as the strongest predators in the region. But 100 Skrull ships, his people would die if he let pride get in the way. I accept your offer, Garthok said. But I lead this operation. The Vorax fleet takes point. Day smiled slightly. Of course, Admiral. Your fleet, your command. We're just here to assist. As Garthok prepared to return to his ship, Hana approached him one last time. Admiral, there's something you should know before we head into battle. What is it? The New Dawn isn't alone. We've been coordinating with other human ships for the past 3 days. They've already started moving toward your colony. By the time we arrive, there will be 15 human ships waiting. We've been planning this operation since we received word of the Skrull buildup in that sector. You knew about the attack before it happened? Garthok was stunned. We've been tracking Skrull movements for months, Hana said. We knew they were gathering for a major assault. We just didn't know which target they would choose. When your colony sent out the distress call, we immediately mobilized. The Skrull think they're attacking a weak Vorax colony. What they don't know is that they're walking into a trap. Our trap. Garthok looked at the human medical officer with new understanding. You've been using my people as bait, just like you used yourselves as bait. Yes, Hana said without apology. But we're going to save them, Admiral. Every single one of them. Because that's what humans do. We turn traps into victories. We turn desperate situations into triumphs. And we never ever let the monsters win. As Garthok returned to his shuttle, his mind was racing. The humans were far more than they appeared. They were strategists, tacticians, and warriors of the highest caliber. They planned operations weeks in advance. They gathered intelligence constantly. They positioned their forces perfectly, and they were about to show the Skrull horde what it meant to face humanity in open battle. The journey to the Vorax colony took 2 days at maximum faster-than-light speed. Admiral Garthok spent most of that time on his bridge, watching the tactical displays and trying not to think too hard about what was coming. The Vorax fleet had grown. Commander Day hadn't lied. 15 human ships had joined them, appearing from different parts of the sector. They moved in formation with the Vorax warships, their communications perfectly synchronized. It was like watching a single organism with multiple bodies. Garthok studied the human ships through his sensors. They all looked like colony vessels, large, blocky, designed to carry thousands of people and years' worth of supplies. But he knew better now. Those were warships disguised as civilian craft. Each one carried weapons, soldiers, and technology that could tear through enemy fleets. On the second day, Quan from the New Dawn sent over detailed tactical plans. Garthok read them with growing amazement. The humans had mapped out the entire battle before it even started. They knew where the Skrull would position their ships. They knew which defensive strategies the Vorax colony would use. They had planned for every possible scenario. How can you predict all of this? Garthok asked during a communication with Commander Day. We've fought the Skrull 47 times, Day replied. We know how they think. They're not creative. They use the same tactics over and over because those tactics usually work. Against most species, overwhelming numbers and biological weapons are enough. But we're not most species. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vorax colony system, Garthok saw the scope of the disaster. The Skrull armada was massive. Over 100 bioships surrounded the colony world, firing biological weapons at the surface. The Vorax defense fleet, only 12 ships, was fighting desperately but losing ground. All ships, battle stations, Garthok commanded. We engage immediately. Admiral, wait. Commander Day's voice came through the communication system. Let us position ourselves first. Give us 2 minutes. Garthok wanted to argue, but he had learned to trust human planning. 2 minutes. No more. The human ships spread out in a pattern that made no sense to Garthok. They didn't form a battle line. They didn't cluster for mutual protection. Instead, they positioned themselves at seemingly random points around the Skrull fleet. Positioning complete, Day said. Admiral, when you give the attack order, we'll execute our part of the plan. Your fleet should focus on protecting the colony world's orbital defenses. We'll handle the Skrull armada. You can't handle 100 ships with only 15, Garthok protested. Watch us. Day said simply. Garthok gave the order. All Vorax ships attack. The 5 Vorax warships surged forward, firing plasma cannons at the nearest Skrull bioships. But before they could engage, the human fleet struck first. It started with missiles. Hundreds of them launched from all 15 human ships simultaneously. But these missiles moved in coordinated patterns, weaving through space like schools of fish. The Skrull tried to shoot them down, but the missiles were too fast, too agile. When the missiles hit, they didn't explode. Instead, they attached to the Skrull bioships and began releasing something. Garthok's sensors showed a strange energy signature spreading across the Skrull hulls. "What are those missiles doing?" he demanded. Yoon's voice came through the communication channel. He was on one of the other human ships. "They're releasing a biological agent we developed specifically for the Skrull. It attacks their bioarmor, breaking down the organic compounds. In about 30 seconds, their hulls will start to weaken." 30 seconds later, exactly as Yoon predicted, the Skrull bioships began to show damage. Their armor cracked and split. Atmosphere vented into space. Then the human ships opened fire with conventional weapons, kinetic rounds, plasma beams, and electromagnetic pulses. The weakened Skrull ships couldn't withstand the assault. They started dying by the dozens. "New dawn. This is bright morning." A voice came over the communication network. "We've got clear sight on Cluster 3. Engaging with Pattern Delta. Confirmed, bright morning. Steel Garden, cover their flank. Steel Garden acknowledging. Moving into position." The human ships moved like dancers, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. They covered each other's blind spots. They focused fire on specific targets until those targets were destroyed, then immediately moved to the next target. There was no wasted ammunition, no confused orders, no hesitation. Garthok watched as the Skrull armada began to crumble. The parasites tried to adapt, tried to change their tactics, but the humans had planned for every possibility. When the Skrull tried to flee, human ships were already positioned to cut off their escape. When they tried to regroup, the humans split them apart with precise strikes. "Admiral, we're detecting Skrull landing pods on the colony surface," one of Garthok's officers reported. "They've already breached the outer defensive perimeter. Ground forces are engaging." Garthok cursed. If the Skrull reached the civilian population centers, thousands of Vorax would die. "Commander Day, we need to send ground forces immediately," Garthok said. "Already on it," Day replied. "New dawn, deploy ground teams. All ships release your assault shuttles." From each human ship, small shuttles launched and headed for the planet's surface. Garthok did a quick count. There had to be at least 50 shuttles. "How many soldiers are you sending?" he asked. "About 2,000, Day said, plus support equipment and medical teams." "You had 2,000 soldiers on civilian colony ships?" "Admiral, I told you. Everyone on our ships has military training. The families stay on the ships to keep them running. Everyone else goes to the surface." On the planet below, the battle was brutal. The Skrull had landed near one of the major Vorax cities. They were spreading through the streets, attacking anyone they found. The Vorax defenders fought hard, but they were being overwhelmed. Then the human shuttles arrived. Taemin led the ground assault. His teams deployed with a precision that stunned the Vorax defenders. They didn't waste time on speeches or complicated plans. They simply moved through the city in coordinated groups, clearing each building, each street, each hiding place where Skrull might lurk. The humans used tactics the Vorax had never seen. They deployed drones that could detect Skrull life signs through walls. They used sonic weapons that disrupted the parasites' nervous systems. They set up portable force fields that channeled the Skrull into kill zones, where human soldiers waited with heavy weapons. But what shocked the Vorax defenders most was the civilians who came with the human soldiers. Medical teams that rushed into active combat zones to treat wounded Vorax. Engineers who repaired defensive barriers while fighting was still happening nearby. And one young woman who seemed to be everywhere at once. Minji had volunteered to join the ground team. She wasn't a soldier, but she was an expert at urban combat engineering. She had learned those skills as a child during Earth's wars. Now she used them to save Vorax lives. When a building collapsed and trapped a group of Vorax civilians, Minji was the first one there. She assessed the damage in seconds, directed her team to the weak points, and they had the civilians free in minutes. When a Vorax defender asked how she knew what to do, she shrugged. I grew up in a war zone. Buildings collapse all the time. You learn to deal with it. The Vorax defender stared at her. She was so young, so small. But she moved through the chaos like it was normal. In orbit, the battle was turning decisively in humanity's favor. The Skrull armada had been reduced to less than 40 ships. They were trying to flee now, but the human ships had positioned themselves perfectly to prevent escape. All Skrull vessels, this is Commander Day of the human fleet. Day's voice broadcast on all frequencies. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you attempt to flee or fight, you will be destroyed. The Skrull didn't respond. They never surrendered. They only consumed or died. I tried to give them a chance, Day said quietly. Then louder, all human ships, weapons free. Eliminate all remaining targets. The human fleet fell on the surviving Skrull ships like wolves on wounded prey. It was methodical, efficient, and brutal. Within an hour, every Skrull bioship was either destroyed or disabled. On the surface, the last Skrull parasites were being hunted down. The human soldiers moved through the city with their Vorax allies, making sure no parasites survived. It was ugly work, but necessary. The Skrull could regenerate from even small numbers. They had to be completely exterminated. As the sun set on the Vorax colony world, the battle was over. Garthok stood on his bridge looking at the casualty reports. The Vorax had lost 3 ships and approximately 500 soldiers. But the colony itself was saved. The civilian population centers were intact. The human fleet had lost 1 ship. A vessel called Quiet River had taken a direct hit from multiple Skrull bioweapons. The crew had evacuated before the ship broke apart, but 200 humans had died. Commander Day, I owe you a debt, Garthok said over the communication channel. No debt, Admiral, Day replied. We did what was right. The Skrull are everyone's enemy. Today we fought together against a common threat. Still, you saved my people. The Vorax Dominion will remember this. There was a pause. Then Day said, Admiral, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. What is it? The Skrull attack on your colony wasn't random. We've been tracking their movements for 3 months, remember? We knew they were planning a major assault. We also knew they were watching several potential targets. Your colony was one of them. Garthok felt a cold suspicion forming. What are you saying? I'm saying we influenced their decision. We leaked information through channels we knew the Skrull monitored. We made your colony look like an easy target. We knew they would attack here, and we positioned ourselves to respond. You used my people as bait, Garthok said, his voice dangerously low. Yes, Day admitted. But we also saved them. If we hadn't acted, the Skrull would have attacked some other colony. Maybe one we couldn't reach in time. Maybe one that would have been completely destroyed. By choosing the battlefield, by preparing in advance, we saved thousands of lives, maybe millions. You had no right to make that decision. You're right. We didn't. But we made it anyway because it was the best strategic choice, and because we knew we could win. Garthok was silent for a long moment. He was angry, furious even. The humans had manipulated his people, used them as part of a larger strategy without asking permission. But they had also saved those people. The colony was intact. The civilians were alive. What kind of species are you? Garthok finally asked. We're survivors, Admiral, Day said quietly. We're a species that learned to make hard choices, to accept difficult truths, and to do whatever is necessary to win. We're not proud of some of the things we do, but we do them anyway because the alternative is extinction. On the planet below, Vorax civilians were being evacuated from the combat zones. Human medical teams worked alongside Vorax doctors treating the wounded. Human engineers helped repair damaged infrastructure. Human soldiers patrolled the streets making sure every last Skrull parasite was eliminated. And young Minji sat on a pile of rubble, drinking water and talking with a group of Vorax children. She was teaching them a game from Earth, something to help them process the trauma of the attack. The children laughed, and for a moment the horror of the day seemed distant. Garthok watched it all through his sensor feeds. These humans were strange, dangerous, and manipulative. But they were also effective, compassionate in their own way, and absolutely dedicated to survival. He wondered what would happen when humanity finished establishing its positions across the galaxy. When they revealed themselves as a true military power, when the other species realized what these small, soft creatures were truly capable of, it was going to change everything. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Garthok requested a final meeting with Commander Day. They met on the New Dawn again, in the same observation deck where they had first talked. But everything felt different now. Garthok had spent the last 3 days reviewing combat recordings, reading reports, and trying to understand what he had witnessed. The human victory had been total and absolute. The Skrull Armada had been destroyed with minimal human losses. The Vorax colony had been saved. And every single action, every tactical decision, every deployment of forces had been planned weeks in advance. "You manipulated us," Garthok said without preamble when he entered the observation deck. From the very beginning, Commander Day stood by the window looking out at the stars. He didn't turn around immediately. "Yes," he said finally, "we did. The distress call from your ship. That was real, wasn't it? You really were tracking the Skrull, but you also knew we would respond. We studied the Vorax Dominion carefully," Day said. "We knew your culture values strength and honor. We knew you would see a distress call as an opportunity to demonstrate both. We counted on your predictability. And the attack on my colony? You didn't just predict it. You caused it." Day turned to face the Vorax Admiral. "We influenced it. There's a difference. The Skrull were going to attack somewhere. We simply made sure they attacked where we wanted them to." Garthok's claws clenched. "You gambled with thousands of Vorax lives." "Yes, and we won that gamble. Your people are alive. The Skrull threat in this sector has been eliminated, and the Vorax Dominion now knows that humanity can be a powerful ally, or a terrifying enemy." "That too," Day agreed. Hana entered the observation deck, followed by Hyun and Taemin. They all looked calm, professional, like they were discussing routine business instead of matters of galactic significance. "Admiral Garthok, there are things we need to tell you," Hana said. "Things about humanity that you need to understand before you report back to your superiors." "I'm listening," Garthok said coldly. Hana took a deep breath. "The New Dawn and the other ships you've met are part of something we call the Vanguard Initiative. It's a military program disguised as a colonization effort, but it's more than that. It's humanity's way of preparing for our real entry into galactic politics." "What do you mean, real entry?" "We mean that everything you've seen so far is just the beginning," Taemin said. "The colony ships, the soldiers, the tactics. These are our scouts, our advanced forces. We're mapping the galaxy, learning about every species we encounter, identifying threats and opportunities." Hyun pulled up a holographic display. It showed dozens of star systems with small icons representing human ships. "We have over 200 ships in deep space right now," Hyun explained, "all of them doing what the New Dawn has been doing. Gathering information, establishing positions, preparing the way." "For what?" Garthok demanded. "For humanity's real fleet," Commander Day said quietly. "Admiral, everything you've seen, every weapon system, every tactic, every soldier, that's not our military. That's our civilian population with basic military training." Garthok felt his blood run cold. "What are you saying?" Hana's expression became distant, haunted. "I told you before that there are humans you don't want to meet. Soldiers who train their entire lives for combat. People who have fought wars that would give you nightmares. I wasn't exaggerating, Admiral. I was warning you." She paused, then continued. "I used to be one of them. Before I joined the Vanguard Initiative, I was part of Earth's Void Corps. We're special operations soldiers who operate in zero gravity, in the dark spaces between ships in environments that would kill most humans in seconds. We trained for 10 years before our first combat mission. We've fought in wars that the civilian population doesn't even know about." "The Water Wars," Garthok said, remembering what Sora had mentioned. "That was just one conflict," Hana said. "Earth has fought dozens of wars in the past century. Wars over resources, over territory, over ideology. We've dropped nuclear weapons on our own cities. We've poisoned entire regions. We've developed biological weapons that could wipe out billions. And we've learned from every single mistake." Taemin spoke up. "The soldiers you saw boarding the Skrull ships, Admiral, those were militia. Part-time warriors who volunteer for combat duty. Our actual military forces are still on Earth. Still training, still preparing. When they come to space," and he shook his head, "the galaxy isn't ready for that." "Why are you telling me this?" Garthok asked. "Why reveal your plans?" "Because we want the Vorax Dominion to understand what humanity is," Day said. "We're not prey. We're not potential vassals. And we're not just another species trying to survive in a hostile galaxy. We're predators of a different kind, Admiral. We hunt knowledge. We hunt strategy. We hunt victory itself. Yun brought up more data on the holographic display. Human history is filled with examples of weaker forces defeating stronger ones through superior tactics. Small groups of soldiers holding off entire armies. Outnumbered fleets winning decisive battles. Underdogs toppling empires. We've studied every single one of these conflicts. We've learned what works and what doesn't. And now you're applying those lessons to space warfare, Garthok said. Exactly, Day confirmed. The Skrull are perfect opponents for us to practice on. They're numerous, they're aggressive, and they're predictable. Every time we fight them, we learn more. We refine our tactics. We improve our weapons. We train our people. You're using the Skrull as training exercises. Garthok was horrified. Yes. And when we've eliminated them completely, we'll move on to the next threat. And the next? Until humanity has secured its place in the galaxy. A young human woman entered the observation deck. Garthok recognized her as Nari, the communications specialist who had broken the Vorax encryption codes. Commander, I have the information you requested, she said, handing Day a datapad. Day looked at it, then passed it to Garthok. Admiral, this is what we know about the major powers in this region of the galaxy. The Vorax Dominion, the Krylon Empire, the Tessan Confederacy, the Warborn clans. We've been studying all of you. Garthok looked at the datapad. It contained detailed information about Vorax military strength, fleet positions, technological capabilities, and political structures. Information that should have been classified at the highest levels. How did you get this? He demanded. We have our methods, Nari said with a slight smile. Breaking encryption is just one of them. We also have human agents who've infiltrated various organizations. We monitor public communications. We analyze trade patterns. We're very good at gathering intelligence, Admiral. It's one of humanity's oldest skills. Garthok looked at each human in turn. You're planning something. Something bigger than just fighting the Skrull. We're preparing, Day said. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are species that enslave others. Empires that conquer through force. Parasites like the Skrull that consume entire worlds. Humanity looked at all of this and decided we would not become victims. We would not be conquered. We would not be consumed. So you're building an empire of your own. No, Day said firmly. We're building a defense network. A web of fortified positions, trained personnel, and strategic assets that will make it impossible for anyone to threaten humanity's survival. We don't want to conquer the galaxy, Admiral. We just want to make sure the galaxy can't conquer us. Hana stepped forward. There's one more thing you need to know. About those darkest warriors I mentioned. Garthok waited. They're already here, Hana said quietly. Not in large numbers, but they're here. Operating in the shadows, gathering information, eliminating threats before they become problems. The Void Corps has teams scattered across dozens of sectors. We've been preparing the battlefield for years. Preparing for what? For first contact with the real galactic powers, Taemin said. The Vorax Dominion is strong in this region, but you're not the strongest force in the galaxy. There are empires out there that control thousands of systems, species that have been spacefaring for millennia, powers that could crush humanity if they decided we were a threat. So we're making sure they never make that decision, Day continued. By the time the major powers notice humanity, we'll have positions throughout the galaxy. We'll have allies, intelligence networks, and military assets in place. And most importantly, we'll have demonstrated that attacking humanity is more trouble than it's worth. Garthok was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind.
What happens when you're finished preparing?
When you've established all your positions, gathered all your intelligence, trained all your warriors, what happens then? Day looked out at the stars. Then humanity takes its place in galactic society. Not as newcomers asking for acceptance, not as weak prey hoping for mercy, but as a power that cannot be ignored, a species that has earned respect through strength and cunning. And if other species don't accept you, then we'll deal with that when it happens, Day said. But we'll deal with it from a position of strength. We'll have options. We'll have leverage. We'll have the ability to defend ourselves and our interests. Sora entered the observation deck, and Garthok noticed she was followed by her young daughter. The child looked at the towering Vorax admiral with curiosity, not fear. Sorry to interrupt, Sora said, but my daughter wanted to thank the admiral. Some Vorax soldiers helped rescue her teacher during the battle. The little girl stepped forward and bowed, a human gesture of respect. Thank you for helping us, she said in careful Vorax language. Garthok looked down at the child. She was so small, so fragile. But he knew now that she was being raised in a culture that would teach her to survive, to fight, to win. In 20 years, she might be commanding a human warship. In 30 years, she might be planning operations across entire sectors. "You're welcome, young one," Garthok said gently. After Sora and her daughter left, Garthok turned back to Commander Day. "I'm going to report everything I've learned to the Vorax High Command. They need to know what humanity really is." "We're counting on it," Day said. "We want the Vorax to know. We want you to understand that humanity is not prey. We're not potential vassals. We're not weak newcomers who need protection or guidance." "What are you, then?" Day smiled, but it was not a warm expression. "We're the species that survived 10,000 years of warfare against ourselves. We're the hunters who brought down megafauna with stone tools. We're the civilization that split the atom and then used it as a weapon. We're the survivors of nuclear war, biological plagues, and climate catastrophes. We're the species that looked at the stars and decided to conquer them." Taemin added, "We're also the species that writes poetry, creates art, and builds gardens in the void of space. We're not monsters, Admiral. We're just very, very good at war. And we've learned that in a hostile universe, that's the most important skill." Garthok prepared to leave. At the door of the observation deck, he paused and looked back. "One more question. The name of your ship, the New Dawn. Is that symbolic?" "Yes," Day said. "It represents humanity's new beginning among the stars. But it also represents a warning. Dawn is when hunters begin their work, when predators leave their dens and start searching for prey. We chose the name deliberately." As Garthok returned to his ship, his mind was full of thoughts. He needed to compose his report to the High Command. He needed to explain what he had learned about humanity. But how could he put it into words? He finally settled on a simple message that he encoded and sent immediately. To the Vorax High Command. Subject: Humanity Reassessment. Message begins. The humans are not what we thought. They are not prey. They are not potential vassals. They are apex predators who have been preparing for galactic conflict for years. Their colony ships are military vessels. Their civilians are trained soldiers. Their tactics are refined through millennia of warfare. Recommendation: pursue diplomatic relations immediately. Offer alliance and trade agreements. Do not under any circumstances make humanity our enemy. They have been watching us, studying us, learning our weaknesses. If we go to war with them, we will lose. Message ends. He sent the message and then sat in his command chair, watching the human ships through his viewing screen. The New Dawn and its sister vessels were already preparing to leave, heading off to their next assignment, their next mission, their next step in humanity's careful conquest of the galaxy. Garthok thought about the little human girl who had thanked him. In her innocent eyes, he had seen the future. A future where humanity would be a major power, where human ships would patrol every sector, where human soldiers would be feared and respected across the galaxy. The age of humanity was beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same. Far away on other human ships in other sectors, similar scenes were playing out. Human commanders revealing themselves to other species, human soldiers demonstrating their capabilities, human strategists positioning their pieces on the galactic chessboard, and on Earth, in heavily guarded military facilities, the real military forces were training. Millions of soldiers preparing for the day when they would be deployed to space. Weapons being tested, ships being built, strategies being refined. The Vanguard initiative was just the beginning. The real invasion was still to come. Not an invasion of conquest, but an invasion of presence. Humanity would spread across the galaxy like a tide. Impossible to stop, impossible to ignore. And when they were done, the galaxy would have to accept a new truth. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay.